Hello and God's blessings from College Church on this Friday in the octave of Easter. Once again, I invite you to go to the usccb.org site to read our daily readings for today. The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. Jesus revealed himself again to his disciples at the Sea of Tiberias. He revealed himself in this way. Together were Simon Peter, Thomas called Didymus, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, Zebedee's sons, and two others of his disciples. Simon Peter said to them, "I'm going fishing." They said to him, "We will also come with you." So they went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. When it was already dawn, Jesus was standing on the shore, but the disciples did not realize that it was Jesus. He said to them, "Children, have you caught anything to eat?" They answered him, "No." So he said to them, "Cast the net over the right side of the boat, and you will find something." So they cast it, and were not able to pull it in because of the number of fish. So the disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, "It is the Lord." When Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he tucked in his garment, for he was lightly clad, and jumped into the sea. The other disciples came in the boat, for they were not far from shore, only about 100 yards, dragging the net with the fish. When they climbed on the shore, they saw a charcoal fire with fish on it and bread. Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish you have just caught." So Simon Peter went over and dragged the net ashore, full of 153 large fish. Even though there were so many, the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, "Come, have breakfast." And none of the disciples dared to ask him, "Who are you?" because they realized it was the Lord. Jesus came over and took the bread and gave it to them, and in like manner the fish. Now this was the third time that Jesus was revealed to his disciples after being raised from the dead. The Gospel of the Lord. It is difficult in these days of not being able to be physically present in church as a community, not only to know and experience the presence of Christ with us as a body, but most especially to not be able to receive Christ in his body and blood in Holy Communion, the foundation of our encounter with the Lord. It is difficult to be able to have to fast from sharing in the graces of Christ in that way. In these Easter readings, the risen Lord appears to his disciples in many ways, but most particularly as they come together and share a meal. Recall that the gospel recounting the road to Emmaus, the disciples proclaim that they find Jesus in the breaking of the bread. And here today in John's gospel, that same motif, that same theme is brought up again when Jesus feeds the disciples, taking the bread and sharing it with them, and the fish as well. The early Christians knew that they encountered Christ most especially when they gathered together and together were fed by Christ in the Eucharist. In these days of pandemic, we are unable to together receive Christ in that way. And yet we know that our spiritual communion, that sacred communion, remains together with us. And it also reminds us that perhaps what we often take for granted, that celebration together of Christ who is present, body and blood, is in these days of absence, in these days of loss, more important for us than ever. And we wait and long and hope for that time when once again, together, united in the Spirit, we can share in the banquet of the Lord and receive him who is the risen Lord.